This is the I Love Success podcast. I'm Peter Jumrukovski, and I have made a vow to myself to help as many people as possible to achieve their dreams. Let's get started. Hey guys, and welcome back to the I Love Success podcast. In this week's episode, we're going to meet with a guy that are on a similar mission as myself. He started out as an athlete, became an actor, known for roles in the Sopranos, Goliath, and Scandal, just to name a few. But he also started a podcast called 10,000 No's, where he meets with successful people and talk about their journey to success and how they have persevered through all the no's they have received during their career. He's an amazing guy, and soon he's going to be one of the leads in the Netflix comedy show called Huge in France. So relax, kick back, and enjoy the show with actor and podcast host Matthew Del Negro. Welcome, Matthew.
Thanks for having me, Peter. Appreciate it.
This is an amazing experience for me to have someone of your caliber here, because when I was studying you, and we're going to talk about if you always kind of wanted a little bit more in life as an athlete, as an actor, and now with podcasting. So I just want to start with asking, who is Matthew Del Negro as a human being?
Well, thank you. First of all, it's a nice introduction. I'm an actor. I consider myself an actor. Podcasting has been kind of this little passion project that I started along the way, a couple of years ago, and really the intent behind it. It's become bigger than maybe I even set out to do, and now I have a lot of thoughts of where it can go and where I want it to go. It's been an incredible experience to sit down with, as you know, these high achievers and really pick their brain and get behind what makes them tick and how they've dealt with adversity and how they view the world. Try to steal some techniques from them. Basically I've said that it's like my own little master class where I get to meet these people. And somebody asked me yesterday in an interview, they said, do you think being an actor has helped you with podcasting? And I said, I thought that was a good question. And as I thought about it, I said, yeah, really, it's the same way that I'll approach a character and, ask what makes, where am I similar to this character? What makes this character tick? Why are they the way that they are? How do they see the world? And try to get under their skin and defend their perspective of the world to everybody else, no matter who that character is. And then as a podcaster, that's kind of what we're doing. You're sitting down and talking to someone and just trying to see things the way they see them. So I don't know, I feel like I got off track of what your, the question was, but you're talking about as an athlete. I never felt like I was a great athlete, to be honest. I felt like I was a hard worker. I cared a lot, but I had some natural ability, but I definitely had at every level, growing up, high school, college, had other guys around me that were way more talented, I think, than I was. But I kind of made up for it with hustle, I think. So
that's amazing. And when we look at the successful people that I meet, that's usually the story. Once the people that are quote unquote talented, it's not always that they have the drive. And then we have those people like anomalies that are a little bit awkward, a little bit weird, but they have the drive because
right.
They want to be in the spotlight. They want to be loved, and that gives them the motivation to go a little bit further. But I'm curious, can we talk about you growing up? You grew up in New York, right?
Yeah. Grew up in Westchester County, New York, so about an hour north of New York City. And despite being that close to one of the biggest cities in the world, really it was very rural. It was woodsy. It was like me and my friends were playing flag football or tackle football on people's front lawns, and then we were playing manhunt in the woods. We were riding our bikes a couple of miles to go to this little market that was near us, and like, it was very different than my kids' childhood. Now, their first several years of their life, they were in Santa Monica near the beach. Is much more hustle bustle than I had growing up. We're now in a neighborhood that's a little more similar, but still more going on. Like, I really had a very quiet childhood in a way. You could hear the birds chirping, and you saw the seasons changing, and I think that in some way has contributed to my personality of being a thinker, sometimes too much of a thinker for my own good.
Yeah. And do you remember, if we look back on your life growing up, what was your biggest pain points as a kid?
I would say I always felt like, sports were big for me. So my sister's 5 years older than me. My brother's 3 years older than me. My brother and I shared a room. And he was always kind of pushing me. I mean, he was like the older brother who's, just on me all the time about everything, which served a purpose because, growing up, we fought a lot. And then we went to the same college. He was a senior when I was a freshman, and we became friends, and we lived in New York City at the same time, became friends. But growing up, it was like just having that older brother beating up on you all the time.
Was he bigger than you?
He was bigger, yeah.
Because you're a big guy.
Oh yeah, he's a big guy. He's not as tall as I am, but he's a strong guy. And I always felt like I loved sports. I felt obsessed with them. But I felt like I was, the combination, I always say my combination was like skinny, slow, and weak. I'm like, it's not a great combination for an athlete. So I was always fighting against that. I felt like I was always eating a lot. I was always, kind of working on getting faster, working on getting stronger, lifting weights, but hard to put weight on. That was kind of the biggest, I would say in a way, that was like one of those really big things that always kind of drove me in some way, like not feeling good enough for what I wanted to do,
And do you think, is that a good driver? Because if I look at my life as an athlete, I was always so hard on myself and never really felt good enough. And I think until the end of my career, then when I was performing my best, I was actually had that mindset. I have my plan. I work out. I go out. I perform, and then whatever happens, happens. Yeah. But it took me like 10 years to realize that. Yeah. And I was so hard on myself, but in a way, I think it made me better at the sport, but also feeling a lot of pressure. Is that something you can relate to?
Yeah, I mean, I think that I used to pride myself on being hard on myself. Even carried over, I think it carried over into my acting career. And I think there's something good about it to a point. Yeah. There's something good about pushing yourself and having standards that you want to meet. But there's something that's not good about the way, if you talk to yourself in a way that's just tearing yourself apart, tearing yourself down, it doesn't actually help. It doesn't help. Somebody had said to me, how would you speak to your kids? Do you have patience and you have love behind it? And why don't you speak that way to yourself? And I think there's been a big shift. I had an acting coach out here, Kim Gillingham, and she would always say, to everybody, she would say, you are enough. And that was one of these things with acting. You realize most bad acting comes from an actor feeling like they're not enough. So then they're overcompensating. And they're feeling like, I'm not this character, so I'm going to overcompensate. I'm going to overact. Whereas if you do your work and you allow yourself to be present, you are enough, you know. And there's a fine line, I think. You know, you don't want to be this like fat cat that's complacent and doesn't push themselves. On the other hand, what are you really helping your cause if you're just tearing yourself apart? And also, like you said, even if that helps your art or your sport or whatever it is, your business, if you're doing that to the point of being miserable, then what's the point also? You know, it's like you got all this great stuff, but like you don't enjoy any of it.
It's so hard because like I'm trying to redefine success. That's why I have this show. And I know success is such a loaded word, but I mean, one thing that I realized is that success and happiness, they're not always walking hand in hand. I don't know if you agree.
Totally. Actually, I had somebody on my show, Natalie Kogan, and she wrote, she was from another country, came here, didn't speak the language, learned the language, went through school, did well, had like 3 or 4 businesses that did really well.
I listened to their show. It was amazing.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
She was kind of, you know, business-wise on top of the world. And she said, but I'm miserable. Yeah. And so she sold the businesses and started something called Happier Now, because she said she would, you know, she would always say, well, I'll be happy when X happens. I'll be happy when Y happens. And then she realized, how do I say like, I'm happier now because, and then being grateful for whatever it is that's like happening right this second, whoever's in your life right now, you know? And that's been a recurring theme on my show, is people talking about gratitude and acknowledging what they have right now, versus looking at like, what can I get when I achieve something, you know?
I think it's all about perspective too. I remember when I went to Sydney 2012 for the Shotokan World Championships, and there was this whole celebration this week of athletes coming together, fighting for world medals, you know. And I remember,
by the way, that is so cool that you did that. I mean, I'm so impressed. That's like, how many people can say that? So go on.
No, thank you. Yeah, it was a great feeling, but I met the South African team. I think there were 50 or 100 people. They were singing the whole week. They were having so much fun. These kids, they had never probably been outside South Africa and saved money probably for years just to go to Australia. And they were so happy. And I don't believe many of them medaled, but they had the best experience.
Yeah.
And then we look at some people that maybe medaled and weren't as happy.
Yeah.
So then is the question, what is really success and what is the perception? Is it really important to be the #1 actor in the world or the #1 athlete? Or is it important to really go after it, but have fun and be okay with, I might not be #1?
Yeah.
And like, how do we relate to that in this modern society where number 2 to 10 is forgotten most times?
That's a great question. Great thoughts to have too.
Thanks.
Yeah, I mean, what's funny is that's kind of, you know, my whole show is delving into that exact same question, I guess, which is like, what is it all for? What are we doing? And despite the fact that I have a show about this, I'm sitting down with people about this, I still have that question for myself. I mean, I'll catch myself. I think I'm quicker to catch myself these days, because even as you're speaking, I'm thinking of like, oh, I want to tell you about so-and-so and so-and-so. And I'm realizing there are all these people that I have met through my podcast. Yeah. You know, I've got all these like real life references of people who have dealt with this. And, you know, I catch myself more these days when I'm in that mode of, but I get in that mode myself. You know, you think like, oh, well, you know, this guy's talking about this all the time on his podcast. He's doing what he loves. Like, it doesn't matter. You're not immune to it. I still find myself falling into the trap of like, well, if I could just get this, then this, you know, and
I think we all do. And but the difference is that you're aware of it. I think awareness is key, you know, because we can all catch ourselves. We're all attracted to things that shine in a certain way, either if it's a relationship, a car, or going to this amazing vacation. But I think sometimes we have to say, wait a minute, okay, what's my journey?
Right.
I'm not on Matthew Del Negro's journey. I'm on my journey. And what do I want to do? Which is super hard because you constantly getting fed with all these other impressions, right?
Yeah. I mean, I'm just thinking as you're saying that, it's actually just being present. Like right now, you know, how amazing is this? We're sitting down, we're in Santa Monica, beautiful weather outside. We have the freedom to be sitting here having this conversation. I don't know you, you don't know me. We're both like, oh, that's cool what you do. You're saying the same thing about me. It's like this right here. This is a moment that you just go like, man, this is awesome. Like, what's better? But
that's why I love podcasting.
But you're the challenge is there are all of these other things that are running through your head that are, you know, well, what do I have to do? I got to do this. I got to do this. Oh, did that? You know, it's like a checklist of things, and anything that keeps us from being right here, right now, I think, ends up being a trap. It doesn't mean you don't have to get to those things, but you'll get to them in their due time. And right now is all we've got. You know.
It's so true. And I mean, I have so much respect for you because when I did the research about you, obviously I don't know you, but Sharon said you got to have Matthew on your
Sharon's
podcast.
The best, man.
He's an awesome guy. So thank you, Sharon, for setting this up. But the thing is, I looked at your life from the outside, and one thing that I aim to is to find a balance in life between career and personal life. And I remember when we emailed and said we can do it on a weekend, you said no, then I have my kids, because you're also a husband. You've been married for many years now. And to do that and also going after your pursuit of self-fulfillment, that's something amazing that I want to talk more about. And also say, I'm going to put myself out there and create a podcast when you already have a name and do something different, because now a lot of people say put a lot of pressure on themselves. I have to be super successful at that because I'm a successful actor, instead of having that beginner's mindset. Let's have some fun and see what happens,
right?
Which kids do. You have kids, right? And that's how we want to be. If we always have the end in mind, like then we're like almost locked into ourselves, right?
Yeah. No, I mean, if anybody goes and listens to the first episode, it's literally me just finally going on the mic, hitting record, and just saying what I wanted this podcast to be. And I'm dropping F-bombs. I'm just talking. It ends up being like an 18-minute riff, and I recorded it and I sent it off to the editor, and I was just like, that's episode 1. And I needed to just pull the trigger. I hemmed and hawed for a long time, and I was scared. I was scared to do it, you know, because it's one thing to put yourself out there as an actor. And I've done some risky things as an actor, but that's interpreting someone else's words. And when I did the podcast, I'm like, this is really, the buck stops with me. You know, who's on the podcast, what's said there. It's kind of my, you know, if you listen to it, you kind of get to know me. And that's a scary thing. It gets less scary the more I do it. I'm kind of like, it's funny, like the podcasting and social media to me, there was a similar journey of, in the beginning, I'm like, social media, you know, I just did not come from that generation of social media. and have gradually kind of embraced it. But I used to be like, well, I don't want to say anything. What if people are, and then I was like, nobody's really listening to anybody anyway. So it's like, say, if they want to listen, they'll listen. If they don't, they'll turn you off. Like they don't, you know what I mean? Like everybody's too busy with their own crap to worry what you said, and that there's a freedom in that. And there's, I guess the way you put it, I guess I don't have, it's interesting hearing you say like, oh, you're the successful actor and you start this podcast. I'm like, I don't feel like, on the inside, I feel like I'm just some dude who was like, I want to do a podcast,
That's awesome, because that's one of the traits of people that are looking for greatness. Because I have a friend that's also doing karate, and he said, if you look at the true masters, when you tell them you're so good at something, they just smile because they don't understand what they're talking about, because they're constantly learning from other people. They're like, what? Is that me?
Well, that's what I feel. I mean, I feel like I'm proud to a degree that, like, the Netflix show I did. At one point, the creator pulled me aside and said something very nice, things that he said to me about my work, and I was really appreciative. And I was like, I guess I have been doing this for a while. Like I guess I have learned something along the way, and so I'm proud of that. But by no means do I feel like, I've got a lot to learn, man. There are so many people out there that are just so good, so talented, that like I'll always be chasing. It does. And I think, I look at Christian Bale. Christian Bale, incredible actor. A real chameleon, has just done some amazing work. I bet you, I don't know the man, I bet you if you talk to him, he feels like he has a ton to learn. And that's crazy to the rest of us, because you're like, dude, you're Christian Bale. Like you've done some amazing things. But I think that's when you're on the inside of it, you just don't, you still feel like I have so much to learn, and you look at the other people around you.
It's grow or die,
Yeah.
I truly believe that. Like if we look, and it is true, when people retire, they start dying if they don't have a good personal life.
Yeah.
We see it all the time. So I think it's so important to want to be able to do more without having this pressure that you have to be perfect all the time, and if you fail you suck, because that's not true, right? But I'm a little bit curious, why did you want to become an actor? When did that like epiphany come up? Because I know you did some modeling. Was that like a transition, or what happened?
No, I didn't really do. Modeling, no. When I was first starting to act, people were like, oh, you should do print work. So I attempted to do a little. I did a couple of print things. Didn't really go well. Like they told me, a lot of people told me I was too tall. So that really didn't. It was very, very little of that, and that was more to try to. As I was breaking into acting, I was like, oh, maybe this will be easier. And you learn like nothing's easy, Yeah. So my transition into acting kind of came by surprise to me. I was playing lacrosse at Boston College, and it was Division I lacrosse, so it took a lot of time at school. I played freshman year, I played sophomore year. And I wanted to study abroad, and most people go junior year, spring of junior year. Yeah. That's when the lacrosse season is. So for some reason I had it in my head, I wanted to go to Australia, which I've still never been to Australia.
Awesome place.
But I got to go. But I for some reason, that's what I want to do. I had heard upperclassmen talk about it. I was like, that's what I'll do. And then I was like, oh, no, that's lacrosse season. I can't go. So I'll go between sophomore and junior year. So I went to Italy. I'm Italian heritage. I went to Italy between sophomore and junior year, and my sister gave me a journal before I went. And, like the first couple of entries were like, very boring, like, very obligatory. Today I went to the piazza, just like boring shit, Yeah. But I was going out with a girl at the time. She was there as well in another city. Long story short, we broke up over there. And I basically had I just had a lot of stuff that was going through my head at the time, and I poured myself into the journal. I didn't go to any of the classes that I was supposed to go to. I was writing in the journal. I filled the journal, bought another one, filled the journal. Just had this almost like a midlife crisis at age 19 going on 20 of just realizing I was playing lacrosse at Boston College. I had kind of, in a way, created this identity that was me but wasn't fully me. And I was kind of done with it. And I think being out of my element, being in Italy and being totally on my own, and the breakup, all of that, it was really on my own in this other country. And I just kind of reflected, what do you want to do? What are you good at? What are you bad at? A lot of stuff came up from childhood stuff of family stuff, my parents' relationship, all this. And in that journal are the first traces of me saying maybe I want to be a writer, maybe I want to be an actor, maybe, but I was really scared about it because I had no idea. I knew one actor, this guy, Pat Collins. He did a youth group in our town, great guy, still friends with him to this day. And that's it. I was I had not acted. I had not done anything. So I'm what am I talking about? What is this? But it was almost like I was having, in retrospect, I look back, I think I was having panic attacks. Yeah. And
because you were this jock at that time, kind of, right?
Yeah.
And now you're going to be this.
Well, yeah, I was this jock, and I didn't know what I was going to be next. I just knew that it wasn't really working anymore. Yeah. Came back home, was kind of on fire with this. I really I felt like I found my voice, and then I came back home and I kind of muted my voice. I played fall ball again. So I went and I played lacrosse again. And it was the end of fall ball, junior year. We were running around the field, and I remember thinking, I was man, I wish I just rolled my ankle right now. I was get be out of here. And all of a sudden I'm I heard myself say that, and I'm this is crazy. What are you doing? I wasn't on scholarship, what are you doing? So I went into the coach and I was I think I'm done. And he said, think about it. You still have a slot on the team in the spring. And I said, I've thought about it, and I'm done. And then I kind of freaked out that weekend because, like I said, that everything was wrapped up in this identity of oh, you play lacrosse and it is, and you're an athlete and all this stuff. But I wanted to have, I wanted to go on spring break. I wanted to do these other things, And so I freaked out for a little bit, and then I kind of, got it together. I was no, I came to this decision for some reason, so go with it. And then that spring or that winter, I went out for a play, didn't get it. And then I went out for another one, and I got a role in this play that wasn't even on a stage. It was in a lecture hall. Yeah. It was a one-act play, but I was the lead of it. And I did it, loved the people, loved the process, and I just literally was told everybody, I said, I'm going to be an actor. And I didn't know, I had no idea what I was getting into. No idea. I was an English major. I started taking film classes. I got a film studies minor. And, I graduated, so that was junior year. Senior year, did that. I graduated, I moved home, and worked for a mason laying patios, did a musical in the town next to me, which I had never done. Went into the city taking classes a couple nights a week and saved up money. And then that January of 95, January 1st, I moved into the city, New York City. And that was it. I just started, waiting tables, bartending, taking classes, scouring through backstage for non-paying jobs, and just kind of clawed my way up. That was it.
That's incredible. And one thing that I really enjoy with this story is, if we look at what happened, you went to Italy this summer, you put yourself out of your environment where you are seen as a specific person.
Right.
Matthew is this guy. And then you have this kind of trauma because you and your girlfriend is breaking up.
Right.
So now all of a sudden you're in a completely new place, and you don't have to be someone that people expect you to be. Mm-hmm. And you started diving into yourself, which I love. And I kind of recommend everybody to go on a journey to just give yourself time to really think about your life and see what can happen with that. Because a lot of times we keep doing what we're doing because of dogma, or because that's what we always have done, and it's hard to break out because what's people gonna think. And I mean, it was so brave of you to quit there, because you could have just continued, right?
Well, I did kind of go. I mean, like, you know, as traumatic as it was, I still did go back to playing fall ball. Like when I was in Italy, I was like, I'm done. Yeah. And then I came back and I was like, yeah, I'll keep playing. You know, it was just, even with all of that dramatic stuff that happened, I still went back, and it still took me months more before I actually went in and quit.
And that's okay, right? Change could sometimes take some time.
It takes some time. Yeah. I mean, you know, here's the thing. I feel like I had that for whatever reason. I don't know why. I had that midlife crisis happen 19 going on 20. Yeah. Other people, I guess some people, maybe they never have that. Although I don't know if I really believe that. I feel like at some point, if you're not, you know, I don't know, maybe this is wrong, but I feel like at some point, if you're not following what you really think you should have followed or wanted to follow, it might be on your deathbed, but like at some point you're going to have that same, a version of what I had in Italy. And I think a lot of people have, they call it a midlife crisis, because I think a lot of people don't have it until they're in their 40s or whatever. And
they postpone it, right?
Yeah, but like it will come knocking on your door, I think. Maybe I'm wrong. I feel like at some point it comes knocking on your door. And it's just like, you know, it's like the story, or actually we were talking about
hey Camila.
Camila. Sorry, I'm making a reference, but we were having a conversation about story structure before we started rolling here. And you think about the hero's journey, you think about the structure of a screenplay or any story. It's the opening is this stasis equals death period, where the protagonist is going along on a line that if they never change, they're going to just gradually numb out into their, you know, eventually their death. But usually about page 12 or somewhere in the first act, there's a call comes in, and they either answer the call or they don't. You know, in Star Wars, it's Luke Skywalker comes back to his uncle's farm to see that it's been burned down, and like, it's like, what are you going to do? And then he decides to go on the Millennium Falcon, and he decides to jump into the second act, which is him kind of learning about the Force and following the call. So in a way, you know, I got my call in Italy for whatever reason, and I think everybody gets their call in one way, shape, or form. And I think if they don't, or if they don't hear it, it gets bigger the next time. And they don't, and it gets bigger the next time, bigger the next time. And it could end up being like catastrophic. If you're ignoring what your essence, or what the universe or God or whatever is, you know, has in store for you, if you keep ignoring it, I feel like eventually, like, the walls will come crashing in and tell you, like, get off your ass and go do it, you know?
No,
I think.
I totally agree with you. And I mean, at some point in our lives, we need to ask ourselves, what's it all about? Like, why am I doing this?
Yeah.
And if we don't have a good answer, we better fucking change something, right?
Yeah.
Because we only have one life, as we know. And I mean, we're so privileged. We can sit here and talk about these things. Some people are fighting for survival right now, but we're in a mode that we have the opportunity to explore. And I mean, I think it's almost like we're obligated to do that for mankind, to show that this is like, human beings are good people. We can create amazing things.
Right.
And so you decided, you started acting. What did your parents think about you?
They were great.
Actor?
I do want to say, before we get to the parents, I was going to say, the flip side of it is, everybody thinks like, oh, okay, so you answer the call, you do your thing, you find your essence, whatever, however you want to phrase it. Everything's gravy from there on in. That's a lie too. That's a total lie.
Yeah.
It's not like you do this and you jump into this and you're following your passion and it's like, everything's like,
it almost gets worse.
Rosy. I mean, it gets hard, man. It's hard, So like I sometimes get afraid in an interview where it's like, it's easy to like sit here like, levitating saying it's like, no, man, it can be super rough, but it's still worth it is what I'm saying. Like if you're at that point and you jump in and it's really rough and you still want to do it, it's like, that's what you should be doing, To answer your question about my parents, I'm really lucky. Like I won the parent lottery. My parents, when I said I was going to be an actor, first of all, they're like, they're like, I think everybody.
Old school Italian, your parents?
No, I mean they're Italian, but they're not like, they're old school in a way, but they're not like old school,
Not showing spaghetti and meatballs.
No, it's my dad is an attorney. My mom was a special ed teacher at the high school where I went to, and they're traditional certainly, but they were like, look, they knew my character and they knew that, and I said, I want to be an actor. And they said, look, we support you. First of all, my dad actually tells a great story of when I did that play junior year. He's like, I came up to Boston and I sat in the audience. And these are parents that like, they were at all of our game, me, my brother, my sister, they were at all of our games growing up. Like they were really supportive, So he's like, I sat in the audience and I opened the little playbill and it was like a piece of paper basically. And it said, Matt Del Negro in this thing. And he said, I was like, is he going to fall on his ass here? Like, he's never acted. Like, what's he going to do? Like, he was like nervous for me. And then he saw me and he was like, yeah, you got some, I think I was untrained, but there was some raw honesty that translated. So I didn't totally, blow. But they basically said, look, we support you, philosophically, morally, but just not financially. So you figure that out. And that was a great thing to say because that's one of those things that, now I'll go speak to acting schools when MFA programs, like the students are about to graduate. And so they'll have me come in and talk about like, what's it like to be a working actor and all that. And one of the things I always say is like, you don't hear this in acting school, but something that saved my ass was I went into the city, I scoured around the city, and I found a rent-stabilized place. It was a 5-floor walk-up, a 1-bedroom. I built a wall. I built a loft. I put my desk under it. I had a metal file cabinet from my dad's office. I made it into a makeshift closet. I stayed there for 7 years. I paid $500 a month that first year. By my 7th year, I was paying like $632 a month. That alone saved me because I'm bartending. I would have to take a pay cut from bartending to go do a play. Even a legitimate off-Broadway play, they'd pay you like $236 a week. When I was bartending, I'd make $300 a night, something like that. People don't think about that. They're like, oh, let's go do our dream and follow our passion. And you're like, okay, what's your strategy? Because you're jumping into a business where there are scores and scores of people say they want to be actors. There's only this many jobs. So it's going to be lean, especially in the beginning. It's going to be lean. And when you get jobs, usually they're not paying for the first couple of years. Yeah. I didn't make a dime for years from acting, So that move of staying in that apartment and trying to make it nice. I mean, I did my version of, I put linoleum floors down. It was a piece of crap, but we had fun there, Yeah. But that alone saved me. Like, I probably would have been knocked out of the game before I was able to get up and running if I had a nice place,
You have to be able to sacrifice something, right?
Totally. Yeah.
And how did you know that so early? That you were ready to be uncomfortable?
I don't know, man.
Why didn't you quit when it got hard?
every time I got there, look, there have been so many times where I've been pummeled. I mean, that's why I have a show called 10,000 No's. There have been so many times where I've been pummeled to the point of really, if I were smart, I would have quit. I mean, really honest. I'm just being honest with you.
Why didn't
But
you?
for some reason, I don't know. I have this belief, this faith, this desire. Like, just, there are so many times when it's so rough that I go, what are you doing, man? You could just do, there's so many other easier things you could do. Yeah. But when it's going, when I'm in, when I'm in the flow and working on something with people that are like-minded, it's like there's nothing better. I love it.
Yeah,
I love it. You know, and I don't know. I just it's kind of like, this is what I do. Yeah. This is what I do. I want to tell stories, and I want to inspire people in some way or encourage people. And so the podcast is really just another form of what I'm already doing. Yeah. It's storytelling aimed at helping an audience go like, oh, I'm not on my own. All of these people went through something. I can go through it too. Yeah. As an actor, I'm interpreting someone else's version of that. In some cases, hopefully I'm making people laugh. In some cases, hopefully I'm scaring people. In some cases, hopefully I'm inspiring people. And, it depends on the role, depends on the story. Yeah. But it's all storytelling,
No, I love that. And I mean, I listened to one of my inspirations in podcasting is Brian Rose from London Real. And he used to be a banker, and he quit, and now he's doing this amazing show.
Oh, I don't know him. I gotta check it out.
You gotta check it out. He's an amazing podcast host and just sharing his journey. But he said, like, it made sense so many times for me to quit, but I'm just so hard-headed. Like, once I decide of doing something, I'm just gonna do it to insanity almost. Yeah. And can you relate to that? Like, do you know where that comes from?
Yeah, I mean, you're always checking yourself though, because you're like I have someone coming on the show. Someone came to me, a PR person came to me and said they have someone who, her whole thing is like quitting by design. Yeah. I'm sorry. And she talks about how like the art of quitting, and really it makes sense. Like, if I didn't quit lacrosse, I couldn't act. So like at some point you do have to shed some skin to get to somewhere else. So there is a fine line in that hard-headedness, and also realizing, oh, if I let this go, there's something else that I'm really meant to do. I totally relate to that person that you're talking about, Rhodes.
Yeah.
There are certain days when you look in the mirror and you're like, what are you doing, man? But there's just I don't know. It's something that I'm not fully. It's not just me. It's like there's something, there's some, I don't know, there's just some big faith, like belief that like, I didn't do all, I've sacrificed a lot, and I didn't sacrifice it in vain. And I'm like, I could go down, but I'll go down swinging. Yeah. It's kind of, where I am. And I also think a lot of people will ask, like, how do you do it with a family, and you have kids and everything, and there are two different answers to that too. There are some times when you go like, because you need to provide for your family. Yeah. You also need to set an example for your family, so you also need to, I feel like it's not a bad thing for my kids to see me following something that I believe in. Yeah. And sometimes successfully, sometimes not successfully, but still sticking to it. I think that that's not, that goes overlooked sometimes.
Yeah, I think it's so important. Like we're trying to be superhuman in front of kids, and not talking about failure as it is plague or something. It's just part of the process, right? And it shouldn't be a big thing. It shouldn't. It should be, okay, I failed, let's cry a little bit, let's be pissed off, let's have a beer or whatever you do to take a run, and then we get back up on the horse, right? And we do it again.
That's kind of the point of like 10,000 no's. It's not 50 no's.
Yeah.
Not 100 no's. It's not even 1,000 no's. 10,000 no's. That's a lot of no's.
Not many people can take those.
The point is, you're going to get a lot of no's. Maybe you're going to get more than 10,000 no's. Like, whatever. Like that's the name. That is the game you're playing. No matter who you are, what field you're in. And that's why when I started, people said, oh, you should really just talk to actors, and you should really just talk to writers and people in your field. And I was like, I love actors. I love creatives. And I've had a lot of them on the show. But I also want to talk to entrepreneurs. I want to talk to athletes. I want to talk to cancer survivors. I want to talk to holistic healers and meditation teachers. And, what I've found and what I suspected, and I've found it now, is that they all have, it's the human experience. If you're chasing anything, it doesn't matter. You don't have that, actors will tend to go like, oh man, like it's really tough, man. It's just a tough business, myself included. Yeah. And now I just want to like smack myself when I say that. It's like everything's tough if it's worth it. It's the CEOs that I sit down with that are flying around in private jets, it ain't easy for them. Yeah. You don't get to that point. Like they don't just give you that. Yeah. All those people have been through incredible trials, and they have all these people relying on them. And when things are great, it looks great on Instagram. When things are down, it's rough, So the no's, the failures, I personally think you cannot get to anywhere worth getting to without going through a bunch of trials and perceived failures. I don't think they're failures. I think they're stepping stones.
Yeah, I love that. And we're going to talk more about that. I just want to share a story about the Sopranos, like a personal story that.
Oh, yeah.
So me and one of my best friends, we were roommates. This is probably 10 years ago. We actually worked together too. And at that point in Sweden, when you bought one of the newspapers, you could add some money. You got the DVD, and you could collect the whole season of The Sopranos. And at this point, my parents had a tobacco shop, so I got these movies every week. So we had the whole. I think we had all seasons. Yeah. And one day he felt a little bit sick, so he stayed home from work. And then after 2 days, I also felt a little bit sick. I don't know how sick we really were. Yeah. But we stayed in and watched the whole. Is it 8 seasons or how?
I think it was 7 seasons, but there was one season toward the end that was like in 2 parts. So I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, 7 or 8, and we watched them all, and it's so fun sometimes when I think about, like, when I'm sitting here with you now, that when you create a show, sometimes you don't see like how that can affect people's lives and how that can create memories or ideas for a lifetime. And I just wanted to tell you that like sometimes you guys don't see that, but it's amazing.
Oh, that's cool. That's really cool to hear.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's another thing that's been cool with the podcast, is like you get these emails or messages on social media of people literally in Australia or Scotland or whatever, and they're like, hey, thank you so much for this episode, or thank you so much for posting something. I'll do these little selfie videos, like walking back from the gym with some thought that I have, and you're like, that's bizarre, man. I mean, that's new. First of all, that's new, that like you can literally be on your phone. I mean, if you think about how crazy it is these days, that I could be walking in California, have a thought, pop on a phone, which is basically this computer that is in my pocket, say something into it, hit send, put it somewhere, and someone in Australia can respond to me like less than a minute later, say, thank you, I was having a bad day, that helped. That's bizarre, right? And so then you think about something like The Sopranos, which is like, David Chase and all the creators who created this masterpiece. Yeah, it is nuts. It's really cool to be a part of that in some way, to be a part of that. And it's not curing cancer, right? But in some ways, these ideas, these words and these thoughts and these stories, they do have a resonance with people. Yeah. So, you can't take yourself too seriously when you're doing it. And on the other hand, like, you got to take yourself seriously enough to know that whatever you're putting out there is going to have a repercussion, positive or negative, depending on what you're putting out there, So.
You say that failure is opportunity. Can you just talk about that? Because there's a lot of people that think failure is just failure.
I put that on the back of the t-shirts, failure is opportunity, which is an abbreviated version because I couldn't fit the whole thing on the t-shirt, which is what my dad used to say, which is failure is just opportunity in disguise. And he would say it like, my dad was not an athlete, but he, like I said, came to all of our games growing up. And like, I remember playing football in high school and like we'd, lose to some team that we should have beaten or we were, whatever happened. And he'd be, he'd have all these little, it's crazy. I'm just thinking about, he forgets that he did this, but like he had like legal pads and he would like write all these things like, Fox Lane didn't beat John Jay beat John Jay, like all this stuff, and like post it up like I'd be going to get like a bowl out for breakfast in the morning, and I'd see this legal pad and like, it's really like pretty amazing if you think about it. And he was not into sports himself at all, but he was, kind of just I think being a good dad. And so that was one of his expressions. Failure is just opportunity in disguise. And, if you want to see that in practice, I could give you the Sopranos story, which is about 9 months before the Sopranos. I was in New York and I went in for a soap opera. Now, a soap opera is not like, when I set out to act, I didn't want to be, that's not exactly what I was thinking I would want to do. But I'm in New York and I'm waiting tables and I'm bartending. I got no money, I'm scraping, man. And a soap offered an opportunity to go work and be paid and have a contract or whatever. So I go in for this thing and it goes well and they call me back and they call me back again. They call me back. And it's like a bunch of callbacks later. I'm at a screen test in Brooklyn on the set of this soap. And it's like me and two other guys. I'm nervous, but I prepare myself. I go in. I feel really good about it. I talk to my agent afterward. I'm like, I think it went well. I think I'm going to get this thing. So 2 days later, he calls me and, he's like, it's not going any further. You didn't get it. And I was like, ugh. And you just, I can't describe it to someone who doesn't act, but it's like there's all of this hope, all of this envisioning of like what it's going to be. Like, I'll leave the waiting job. I'll leave the bartending job. I'm going to have, money for years coming in. I'm going to be working. I'll be on TV, all this stuff. And then it's just like, wham. There's no second prize. There's no, prize for second place. It's just, no. You're like, shit, you're back to zero. You're back to square one, right? And you just say, oh, and you go back, you're slinging drinks or whatever you're doing, and you're in class. So about 9 months after that was when The Sopranos came in, went in, same thing. Went in for the casting director, called back for the producers, called back again. Heard that I was the front runner, but they wanted to see me one last time. I thought, oh, great, they're not going to give it to me. This is The Sopranos, right? Go back in, super nervous, sitting there waiting to go in. A guy comes by, goes, relax, kid. I looked up, it's David Chase. And he goes in the room, I go in, I give the audition. Feels good, but I'm still like, come on, man, this is The Sopranos. About an hour later, I get a call, you got the part. And it was like a good chunk of a part. And the failure is just opportunity in disguise. Is that soap that I didn't get, someone else could have taken that as a failure and just been like, I'm done. I'm hanging it up. I didn't know from that vantage point that The Sopranos was 9 months down the road. I didn't know that door was just down the hallway. You know, like that failure was an opportunity in disguise. It opened me up. If I had done the soap, I wouldn't be going in for Sopranos. Sopranos, you know, talk about a job that pays dividends. Like, they didn't pay me a lot of money for doing it, but I mean, for years after that, I'd be on other jobs that I got on you know, good shows. And after like being there for 2 or 3 weeks, they go, so what's it, you know, what was it like working with Gandolfini, or what was it like being, and you're like, oh, you knew I was on The Sopranos? And they're like, yeah, we knew you were on it. And you realize like that show within the industry was just so well respected. It helped. It helped. You know, it put me on a different path. And I couldn't see that the day that I got the call that the soap wasn't going any further, right? But that's a quote unquote failure.
Yeah. It's the universe working for you in a way, right? Do you believe in the universe, and what did you learn from the guests? Do they believe in some bigger power, or like? I feel like actually I was just saying this with someone I interviewed, a guy who played in the NFL for 10 years the other day, and he was quoting from the Bible, and I said, you know, people come in. Listen to that one. He's such no, that's another one. This is a new guy. It hasn't been out yet. Yeah, this guy Heath Evans is great. Yeah. But I said, you know, it's not everybody comes in is of a particular religion, but I would say almost every guest has some higher purpose, some higher belief, something that's driving them that's beyond just what's right in front of them. And for me, you know, I grew up Roman Catholic, ironically went to college, a Jesuit college, Boston College, and went kind of away from the church, kind of come back, gone away, come back, gone away. And now I feel like my faith has kind of brought me back, but I've been going to this church in my town. It's like a non-denominational Christian church, which I never saw myself doing that, but I just happened to meet this guy who was the father of another kid that my son played basketball with, and he had moved here to be the pastor of this church, and he invited me to go, and I went, and I was like, this dude is awesome. Like, he's speaking to me. So I feel like there is a faith, there's a, you know, I would say if you know, over the years, I've just always had something larger guiding me. Yeah. Like, I always feel like it's my job to do everything I can do to help my own cause. And I need to do that. Everybody needs to do that. But there's also a part of me, I mean, well, not even a part of me, there's also a belief that I have that's like, I'm only this, you know, I'm this one little dude, right? Like, I can't do, no matter what I like, you're gonna try to do everything you want to do and muscle it through and everything. It's like, you need help, you know? And I realize, like, I need help, and things happen that are out of my control, and people come to my aid. I've been, you know, I feel like I've been the beneficiary of a ton of goodwill, a ton of great coaches, great parents I've been mentioning, you know, my siblings, like friends, like my wife is awesome. My kid, you know, it's like, I'm a lucky dude. And like, you can't, so I do believe, like, you can, you know, you need to hustle your ass off, but at the end of the day, you can still hustle your ass off and get hit by a bus. Like, you can't control that. You know, hustle your ass off and there's an earthquake. Bang, you're done. Like, so I feel like there's like a little bit of perspective. You got to relax a little bit and have some fun too.
Well, yeah, you just realize, like, you know, you control what you can control, and then the rest is in God's hands. And it, you know, if you don't believe in God, then it's in the universe's hands, or it's in something bigger than you. That's my belief. And some people believe that, some people don't, and to each his own. I don't, I respect what anybody thinks. That's my take on it right now.
Yeah. It's awesome. And how have you evolved as a person during this journey of having the podcast? Has that benefited your work as an actor? And
absolutely, man. I said to someone recently, the podcast was one of the best decisions I have made in my career. And from a certain vantage point, it's batshit crazy that I decided to create a podcast on top of everything else. But the people that it's brought into my life, the thoughts that it's brought into my life, the kind of the benefit it's had to some others that have told me about it. I don't know, maybe it's hopefully benefiting other people that haven't expressed it to me, but even in the ones that have just responded, again, kind of like, it's a ton of work. It's more work than I realized it would be, but it feels worth it. I feel like in some small way, it's giving, it's hopefully, and I think from the feedback, it's empowering some other people. And like you said with the Sopranos, like, who knows where that goes? Like, it's pretty cool. Like, I did it, done. Even if I never put out another episode again, those episodes that are out there, they live out there. And like, I even think like a buddy of mine, one of my best friends, is an actor. I still think to this day he's never listened to one episode of it. But he's like, I don't need to listen. We have these conversations all the time. But he, maybe he listened to that first episode, and this is when he said that. He's like, I think it's awesome. It was the 18-minute rant. He goes, I think it's awesome. And he goes, and I actually think it's just cool from like a standpoint of you putting down your thoughts of where you were at that time in your life. He's like, for you to look back at, and for your kids to look at, who knows, like your grandkids or whatever. It's just like, it's kind of cool to document it and to actually see yourself groping around in the dark looking for some kind of truth. Because like, I'll look back at me right now. Guarantee we'll look at this interview and I'll be like, oh, dude, what are you thinking? Cringing at whatever I say right now. Because hopefully you're going to grow. And 10 years from now, I'll look back at this guy and go like, oh, he knew some stuff, but he didn't really know what I've learned now, And
that's cool, right? Because I heard someone saying, I don't know if I agree or not, but they said, if you're not ashamed of yourself a year ago, you're doing something wrong. It's kind of funny, but it also puts a lot of weight on you actually growing and having the courage to go after things, right?
Yeah. That sounds like extreme. You're gonna be ashamed of yourself, but I do hope that you look. I look back and I go, oh, cool. I had some stuff that sounded pretty good. Now I've added to that repertoire. I've added a couple of tools to the tool belt. But yeah, the podcast you were asking, like, it's certainly enriched my life. It's like definitively, it has just opened my eyes in a lot of ways, raised my standards, and it's helped me as an actor. One, I'm sitting down with actual human beings and picking their brains. That helps me when I'm looking at the characters that I'm playing, right? And then just from like even from a confidence level of like, when you go into a room as an actor, sometimes it's like the system is set up where you're like doing this song and dance, like, it used to feel like, like, give me a job. And you're like doing this, you're juggling and you're doing all this stuff. And now it feels a little bit more, not that's an exaggeration, but like there's something about this where I'm like, I walk into the room going, if I like the project, going, I hope that I get to work with you guys, but like, I've got something that I created out of thin air over here that I'm super proud of. Like, I got that. It's kind of like, you know, with when you have kids, I think it, in a certain way, enriches your acting. One, because of the emotional component that you grow as a human, but also because you're like, your kids are so much more important than like this job that you just, that you have it. There's just a different shift of energy where it's, your perspective is a little bit better. You know, your perspective is like where acting stands in my life is just a little bit, probably a little bit healthier than it used to be.
Yeah.
You know?
No, I love that. And I just before you came here today, I read a quote on Instagram by Neil Strauss, and it was something about like, are you, when someone is talking, are you actually listening, or are you just planning what you're gonna respond?
Yeah.
And I thought about that and think, what do I do when I have a podcast? Because sometimes I have this idea what I want to get out of it, but that's not what I really want to do. What I really want to do is have deep, raw, and honest conversations.
Yeah.
Not just on the podcast, like all my life.
Right.
Because that's when we grow, when we actually listen to people, not only people that we know, but people that we meet, and that we are open to see the beautifulness, I don't know if that's a word, for the people that we see, right?
Yeah.
How do you feel when you have these conversations with people? Have you become a better listener as well?
Yeah, I think I started the podcast because I realized I've had these when I was introduced to the concept of podcasts and was, you know, made aware that they even exist, I started listening to like Mark Maron and these conversations that are very, you know, loose and flow, and I was like, I've been getting in these conversations my whole life. Maybe I could do this. And then so I love it. I really love it. What I found interesting is, because I do the same thing where it's unedited, it's raw. So you have to direct it while like right now, it's so much easier to be in this chair than that chair, because I'm like, hey man, ask your questions. Like, I don't have to think about anything except answering what you just asked me.
Yeah.
You have to be thinking like, I'm asking him this, but did I get around, and where are we gonna, and what's the time, and like, you know, am I gonna get it around to the thing? Is there a journey here? Did we go around and come back? Like all of that stuff. So sometimes I'll have a conversation with someone. I keep banging this thing, sorry. I'll have a conversation with someone. I'll love it. I'll feel totally engaged, right? Yeah. Like I'm listening. But because I have so many other things also that, you know, logistically I have to be doing, sometimes I'll listen to the conversation later, or I'll listen even months later. And I'm like, I forgot that they said that. Like, or my wife will listen because she runs a lot, so she's listened to all of them. God bless her. Yeah. And
what a fan.
And she'll be
That's
like,
what?
Yeah. And I'm like, really? You know. So that is a good test of that it's decent material and that she's pretty cool. So she'll come back and she'll like, oh, that was so great when they said this, or this, and I'm like, oh yeah, you know, because sometimes your mind is so full of like, how am I going to get it done and get, you know, deliver something to an audience, that it hits you differently when you hear it later.
The key might be high, like Joe Rogan.
Yeah, I just saw him do stand-up Saturday night. Oh God, I just saw him do stand-up Saturday night. He was really, really funny. Yeah,
but he's constantly high, I think, as well.
Is he? Yeah. You know, it's funny. Like I really have not. I've only seen snippets of his show.
Yeah,
I should be listening, but they're like.
3 hours.
I'm amazed by that. 3 hours and he gets, you know, 8 million views. It's
So we had an awesome time, and I think we have a lot more to talk about, but I kind of want to like circle back to two questions just to end this. And one of them is that I want you, Matthew, to imagine your life, and you're 87 years old now. You're sitting maybe in a rocking chair or doing deadlifts, or I don't know what you're going to do when you're 87, but you're kind of contemplating over your life. What do you want to have accomplished and seen to be able to say, oh shit, this was a good run?
I want my family around. My kids, if I'm 87, so my kids probably have kids by then, hopefully. And would they even have kids? No, I don't think it'd be that far. Family around, my friends, just to know that I've kept up all these relationships that are important to me. That I guess with my work, that kind of, maybe for my work, it's like a bigger version of what exists now. I feel like I get some nice feedback, but maybe it would just be deeper. Maybe the stories that I'm telling are resonating even more. My participation in them is a larger piece of the pie. But again, it's like not the things itself. It's like the like this, whether it's my family and friends or it's people that I don't know who are talking about my work, it would be like, did I leave the world better than I found it? Yeah. Did I in some way have a better effect than a worse effect? Did I help some, and if I feel like I did that, and there will be, we're human, so it's not going to be a perfect record. I'm sure I'm going to piss some people off. I'm going to, I'll fall short. I'm sure. But if I could look at it and feel like that's what I was striving for, and that I accomplished that more often than not, then I'll feel like, all right, cool.
That's good. And I mean, I love that you're putting yourself out there, and I mean, you're in a stage in your career where you have worked for a long time as an actor, and just to have the courage to do new things always. And I know you're working on some cool scripts as well about this motivational speaker guy, and I mean, I can't wait to see what's in store for you. And I love meeting with creators, because sometimes people say that they're only in their own head thinking about themselves, but the real creators, as I see it, is people just like yourself. They want to give, they want to share. That's why we do this, right? Yeah. To create an emotion in other people's lives. I mean, if someone listening to this starting to change their life because of our conversation today, I mean, then this is worth it. Anytime, right? And last question is, because I'm all about sharing journeys, but at the end of the day, I want the people watching and listening to take action in their own life, just like you. So if they could do one thing to get started on their dreams, what would that be?
I would say, well, I just heard this weekend from a friend who's a former guest, Luca Hosivar. Do you know him?
No, I gotta listen to that.
Through Bedros and all those guys know him.
Yeah.
He said something this weekend that resonated. He said, it's great that you got passion. It's great that you want to do something, but get tactical to put it into action. So this was on a Saturday. Somebody said something. He's like, that's great. You want to do that. Put something in your schedule for Monday that you can do that will get you there, that will start getting you there. And I think that's not the sexy answer, but I think that's like probably the most, maybe the most useful answer. Yeah. People are listening. It's easy to listen to an interview. It's easy to then go from this one and listen to another one and get this book and that book. And, I do it myself. It's like there's a certain amount of avoidance in it too. It's great. You need to feed yourself, positive thoughts and all of that. I do it every day. However, if it gets to a point where you're only feeding yourself positive thoughts and you're not acting, and you don't have something specific that you're doing where you're putting one foot in front of the other, I don't think you're just going to be talking about it, and you're going to be talking about other people doing it. But if you do something that requires you to potentially fall down, fail, or potentially get closer to your goal, then you're on your way. And it could be a baby step. It does not need to be dramatic. I mean, maybe you haven't gone to the gym in 10 years. It's like, take a walk around the block. I mean, for someone listening, that's a huge accomplishment. It doesn't have to be, go do an Ironman. Yeah. It's like, write a thank you note and send it to someone who, has really helped you. Yeah. Walk it out to the mailbox, put it in, boom.
All those steps add up, right? That's why we are sitting here today. That's why you have come so far in your life. And if we look at all these people that we have met, it's just a whole bunch of small steps added together without quitting, even though you get all these no's that you're talking about. And I love the name of your show. And I mean, I've written a book about it called The Goal Book, and it's about setting goals. But at the end of the day, I say, do your homework. And what does that mean? At least one thing to get you a little bit closer to what you want. It doesn't have to be anything big at all. And I mean, I'm super grateful for this opportunity to have you here, Matthew. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me on. You asked great questions. Totally present. It's really is a pleasure. If I can give myself one plug, it would be to tell people I'm really excited about this show. You mentioned it in the beginning, Huge in France, April 12th on Netflix. This is 2019 right now, guys.
Yeah. So when you're listening. If you listen in 100 years, you can still find this show, and it was a success. And I can't wait to watch it, to be honest. And
I think it'll make you laugh a little bit. I think
and
so.
You're one of the leads.
Yeah. And it's just, I love my character. I love the show. I love the people I worked with. And the word is that Netflix is excited about it. You always wait to see if it connects with an audience. I hope it does, because it was fun to do. I'd like to do more of it. So
awesome. So thank you, and we'll put the link to your podcast and to your website so people can start following you, the ones that haven't heard about you before. And if you ever call in sick, my advice is to watch the whole 7 or 8 season of The Sopranos. It's an amazing time. So thanks again, man.
Thank you, man. Yeah. What a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you guys for watching and listening to this conversation I had here today with Matthew Del Negro. And as you know, we're all about giving, just as Matthew. So please subscribe to 10,000 No's, subscribe to I Love Success. Go to my website, ilovesuccess.co, and I'll give you a couple of free chapters of my book and all these amazing tools that we give you, because we want you to succeed. But just as Matthew said today, don't just find yourself watching the next show and the next YouTube clip. Do one thing today that takes you a little bit closer to what you really want. So we're done. You get to work now, and thank you so much.